due to, what was instinctually something that we should have acted upon immediately, which was an echo coming through Paul's end.
Pretty like darkness while you sleep. I'm part of the nightmare that you can't see. Uncover my likeness, tell me. I'm tortured and bleeding, you're condemned. What truth are you screaming with teeth on edge? I wish I could feel it in me.
Where I was hearing myself, and I'm like, there's no way that that's not going to infinitely loop, and then we're going to have like a fever dream of an audio file when we're uploading this to Spotify, just like, I
That sounds
can't tell.
awesome. To be fair.
Right. It could sound awesome if there was just guitar and a loop pedal or some shit, but we don't want to be on a
Yeah.
loop pedal. No, sir.
I mean, I think like one of you is enough, right? We don't need two of you.
Right? We don't need two of me, three of me. We don't need a whole freaking Sean Cross army. I think we're good on that part. But ironically, now it is actually 11:11 a.m. for me on the 29th of
Make a
October.
wish.
Yeah, make a wish. Exactly. Gonna make a wish silently. All right, the wish has been made, people, and yeah,
That was like very aggressively done.
it's just like
That was.
wish,
I wish I had no choice.
right? Manifesting that shit. But yeah, it is 11:11 a.m. on the 29th of October. I have been really, really busy regarding the Anatomy Crosscast. Just yesterday, people, we recorded an earlier 7 a.m. session for about like 2 hours, I think, or something closer to there,
Wow.
turning the entire session then into closer to 2.5 hours for our co-host, the Orchid, and his new international Ignite the Church band project, also spanning across the world, with one member in Wales, the founding member in the Philippines, and then the three other members located more or less in the Midwest or the center of the U.S. territories, whether in Ohio or Minnesota. In the middle of the day, we ended up having Chase Wilson from Sulfur return to the show for another speed run 45-minute session, more or less, where we talked about their upcoming tour this winter with that of Cell, Crucifixion, Dissent, and hosted then by UK slam or death metal titans Ingested, now being fronted by Josh Davies, formerly of Monasteries, under the label of Seek and Strike until they disbanded, Malice UK, which I would argue was basically the spite of the UK. They had a very, very classic, pissed off deathcore sound that didn't exactly relate to MySpace, and in its discography so far, doesn't exactly contribute to MySpace, but that's why I mentioned it's the spite of the UK, because it just sounds like spite. But now he is the frontman of Ingested, who happens to be, again, hosting the Eviscerator tour of 2025, and I have every intention on going to see that show, simply because four of the artists on that lineup we've hosted on the show. It's a damn cool thing to
Nice.
say, even if, the Anatomy Crosscast, formerly the Anatomy Podcast, didn't have any correlation with the assembly of that lineup. It will still be cool to have some type of presence, even subconsciously, when attending that show this winter. But then later in the day, as I was just telling Paul about, we had Kentucky death metal kingpins, The Human Tragedy, return with the new edition of Frank, one of their newest member, as of two members joining, but him being the remaining newer member that joined. And let's just say, people, I do think that you all will enjoy that very much, because very similar to Dan Ferguson of Utilize the Remains, one of our most successful sessions of all time. Well, let's just say there was just enough lemon bar vodka on my end, and also a priest costume, and eventually we went from telling Frank's story to just laughing about dick jokes most of the session, but also, of course, doing an under the skin lyrical dissection for their album coming out this Friday, long overdue, that being Upon Waves, The Inferno, which just happens to be a last-minute collection of music that they wanted to present to the public before they get started on some brand new material as this reincarnated lineup. Today, like you guys can see, as you can observe, we have Paul Visser of Black Orchid Empire joining us once more. And for me, this is going to be a very, very special session, mainly because, pardon me, a lot of commentary to jam in there in the beginning. But we have Paul Visser from Black Orchid Empire joining us, which when we did our first date session back in 2023, this would not only be the final session that I ever recorded, nice and cozy, during the spring of 2023 over in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, but this would also be the final session for, I do believe, year 3 of the Anatomy Crosscast. Now we are well into that of year 5 of the Anatomy Crosscast. So far hosting, right off the gate, Biofreak Records, which was our first rap artist or rap supergroup based over in California, recommended to us by new co-host as of this year as well, Tony Slam, who is a big slam and rap guy, but he also has Infinectomy, which that's his slam band that he used to be just a guitarist for, but took up the reins of frontman, and then he has Ruptured as well, which is going to be a more beat down band, and let's just say he has the intention of getting as many slam and hip-hop bands correlating with Biofreak Records on the Anatomy Crosscast as possible. Not only that, people, but we are looking into a great many innovations for this show, possibly soon looking into our first sponsorship that was networked and recommended to through Finn the Orc King, who was our first co-host. He has the intentions of getting a lot more occultic and black metal bands based here in the U.S. on the show. But needless to say, people, we got a lot of content coming out for you guys, a lot of conversations, a lot of jokes, a lot of stories. It's going to be a great time, I think, as we prepare to conclude 2025. Hopefully getting up to 30 sessions out by the end of the year, which in the context of those 30 sessions and the 30 bands that I alone have in queue waiting to be hosted, waiting to have their stories told, that does not include the artists and potential sessions that Tony Slam and the Orc King plan to record and plan to film, send over to me, and have me personally upload by the end of the year. So let's just say, people, after 3 months of radio silence and plenty of couch surfing, as I was trying to just be more realistic, be logical, but also draw certain boundaries and get myself out of what felt to be endangering situations just because of certain people, after those 3 months of radio silence, we are back, baby. We are back, more powerful than ever. We're getting the rest of the Anatomy Crosscast as it has been since those 3 months of radio silence re-uploaded, and then everything after that will be fresh, at least over on Spotify, and that's just on Spotify alone. So, sir, welcome back. How are we doing today?
Thanks for having me, man. No, I'm good. I'm very, very good. Well, it's the end of my day, so I'm chilling. We're about to do rehearsal and stuff, and try and make a bit more of our album, which is so close to being finished, but I have to admit it's not finished yet.
Yeah, fair enough.
Hopefully we'll be soon.
Yeah, and what's really cool too is that in the process of wanting to have you return to the Anatomy Crosscast after I was sent your newest song, The Labyrinth, after that, it's like, not only was I in great anticipation of this session, but my roommate, who I showed Black Orchid Empire, he actually became profoundly fascinated with the band as well. And the intention was to have him join us today, but in the time it took for him to start getting into this band, helping me get to my job, because I'm now working the best job I've ever worked, maybe as far as pay and benefits, working as a kitchen supervisor in a prison relatively close to me. Now I have the financial spine and backbone necessary to make more of these sessions possible. And he's been helping me get to and from work, but he's like, man, I really do want to talk to this band. But then he got a job, and I'm like, okay, cool. You got a job. You gotta attend that, of course. And he's like, yeah, let Paul know I said hi, and therefore he says hi. And
that's very sweet. That's always refreshing. I mean, it's one of the best ways to be introduced to music. It's just recommendation and random stumbling across stuff. That's kind of the point of all these things that you do. But like, it's gratifying that somebody can stumble across it or be introduced to it and then find something to love in there. That's why we do it.
Exactly. Not only that, but I don't know, I definitely give myself a pat on the back in all this time after finally having hosted a band that's someone I've been close with for years. They're like, yeah, we know you're a deathcore guy, a slam guy, and you're into all this heavier, weirder music. But when I'm finally able to introduce them to an artist, I'm like, yo, I hosted this one band back in the day. I show them and they actually enjoy it. I'm like, I feel accomplished. Like, then the show has a little bit more relevance to me, if that makes any sense.
I guess our style is maybe a little bit more accessible to some people. Like, it's got, it's still, I still think of us as a pretty heavy band, but there's no scream, there's no like heavy vocals, and that kind of, as much as that puts people off in some of the heavier kind of genres, like places where they love death metal and deathcore and stuff, it kind of works for people that aren't so much into that but do like heavy music.
Exactly.
So I don't know, we've always been super into the melodic side of music. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. But it does mean that we're maybe a little bit more accessible than some stuff.
Yeah, honestly. And that's the only reason, if I have mentioned it in this recording so far, that I've always considered Black Orchid Empire to be the most radio-friendly metal band we've ever hosted. And that is simply because, you can probably play this on the radio, whether here in the US or over in the UK, and people won't be caught off guard, especially people who do still regularly listen to radio. They, a song by Black Orchid Empire, which I would dare say in your discography so far, Deny the Sun and Glory to the King are probably like the first bands I would recommend to any radio channels or radio shows. But, people listen to that then, and they're like, whoa, this is like just heavy enough without the screaming, and it's like, whoa, this is easier to listen to. And I'm like, oh, well, we hosted them, so cool. That's a good thing in my book.
I think the intention for our next record is to definitely maintain that, but also push into the proggier side a bit more. And a kind of more experimental side. So there's some longer songs on there. There's already some stuff that's a bit left of where you might think it's going to be. There's definitely the more singly songs. But I think even when we do a singly song, we're likely to have something kind of gross in there at some point. Right. So it's always worth looking out for that. But yeah, I think we've had a lot of fun making this record. It's been just the natural progression for it is to move into being kind of weirder and less structurally formulaic. The weird thing you get is that some bands where they are really heavy and it's all scream vocal and it's all harsh, it can sometimes actually lack dynamic and lack kind of impact because it starts at 10 and kind of ends at 10. And I think what we really enjoy is building something where you might start in a very soft place and it just ends up getting crazy. And then you kind of adding drama and adding contrast. I feel like contrast is something that's a bit underused in some genres.
Yes.
It's like how low can you go, how heavy can you go, how hard can you go, how fast you can go. It's a fun experiment, and I wonder if it's a little bit limiting sometimes just to have everything on 10 all the time.
Absolutely.
And plus we work in we work in other genres a lot with other people, and working in like the pop world. I'm always thinking about melody and thinking about harmonic structures and dynamics. So it's nice to bring that into the kind of heavy music world. In the way that there's some undeniably gigantic bands doing that, like Sleep Token are very good at that. However you feel about them, like, they're not for everybody, but they're very good at being incredibly accessible, but also they get heavy. They get super heavy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you mentioned Sleep Token, because up until last night, dude, I kid you not, up until last night, I had no idea, and this is like another, I would dare say, like, clickbait point of the Anatomy of Crosscast. I had no idea that the drummer of the band that we hosted last night was the reason for all those articles about the names getting leaked out, like the personal identities of the band members getting leaked out. I'm like,
that pissed them off.
It did. And I'm like, it pissed them off. It pissed their fans off. And he was like, yeah, I mean, the thing is, they were all in bands before Sleep Token, and they were all known by their personal names before Sleep Token, and some of their members even do like Twitch streaming where they're just completely maskless, nothing like that. And so he was like, the next person that says like, you know, gives me shit for leaking the names, I'm just gonna take everything down to be more of an asshole. I'm like, dude, what? But
the problem with having that kind of setup where you are setting your whole stall in like secrecy and intrigue and kind of I mean, I don't really want to call it. It's not a gimmick because it's cool and it works, but it's like they were very aware of what they were doing. They were doing that in a very deliberate way, and I'm sure they thought about one of the downsides of that was going to be at some point it stretches to breaking and people find out who you are. It's not going to last forever. If anything, that just increases the interest in the band. I don't think it's a problem. The same thing happened with Slipknot. You know, after a while, they themselves were like flirting with it, like showing people maskless but out of focus and stuff in videos, and like it becomes too big to like stay like that, especially the size of the band. And what are you going to do? Like they have to expect that. So I think whilst the kind of, I'm sure there are actual genuine like concerns, and I'm sure it does piss them off, and I'm sure they'd rather it was just like not a thing. They kind of invited that when they created that entire scenario, and they must have known it was going to happen.
Yeah, it was
you know, whatever.
Right, absolutely. It was inevitable, and the thing is, it's fun to toy with anonymity, and of course, everybody deserves privacy, right? So by me,
I think they're two very different things.
Yes.
Two very different things. You deserve privacy. You don't automatically deserve anonymity.
Yes.
You just hope for anonymity. I think everybody has a private life. Even people who are not trying to hide behind a mask in any way are like, they have their own private thing they don't want anybody to really get involved in, and it's separate. It's two separate things.
It is.
But I think it's you cannot ever guarantee anonymity. It's not going to happen.
Absolutely. And one of my biggest things, one of my younger philosophies, if you will, and I say younger in the context of this is a newer idea, as I, at snail pace, mind you, get bigger and bigger with the things that I do. There's a big difference to me between privacy and secrecy. Privacy means that, I don't know, you get to be a human being and have your own personal life separate from that of the creative mediums that you do. People, actors and actresses in Hollywood, for example, they don't get even privacy. And I think that's the one reason that I would never want to get involved in any profound and prolific enough to be qualified for Hollywood level voice acting or maybe even directing, any of that type of stuff. I would never want to be involved with Hollywood because, well, for one, it's a theatic Satanist cult when you peel back the curtain. But then on top of that, the moment that you get big, like Johnny Depp big or Jason Momoa big, you don't really have any privacy. People are always trying to chase you, and they thrive off of the idea of catching you off guard or getting you where you're most vulnerable, even from a distance, just taking photography of you at an airport or when you're getting lunch or when you're going on a date. And that really just invades privacy. But for me, the difference... I think
it's about the nature of your like drive to become famous. So I think for a lot of people, they become famous because they're really good at what they do and people are really interested in it. So like if somebody's just a sick tennis player, they're going to be famous for being a great tennis player. That doesn't mean they want to court fame. They don't want it. They're not interested like in that as a thing. There are people who court fame who actually like deliberately, that's what they want. They want to be renowned. They want to be famous. And I think in those cases, they're probably the people who are calling up the paparazzi and telling them where they're going to be or courting it. And I think that's quite dangerous and quite damaging for everybody concerned. I think if you become well known and then you have to deal with that stuff, even though you didn't really look for it, that could be really, really hard, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, we're just in an age where everybody wants all the information all the time, and that makes that difficult. I think probably most of the time you see lots and lots of tabloid stuff about the same person, it's because somebody's kind of coordinating that, and they're kind of deliberately making that a thing. I think we can't be naive enough to assume that it's, there's paparazzi outside every single famous person's house 24/7.
Right.
But yeah, you know what? It must absolutely suck. I can't imagine being like Beyonce level famous. I think it must be super weird.
Yeah, Beyonce
And then it just,
famous
you get surrounded
nice.
by people who tell you you're amazing all the time, which
Yeah.
you need to be told to like fuck off every day.
Right. Exactly.
I think that's really healthy.
It's definitely important to draw boundaries, and of course we're only talking about the example of Hollywood actresses and actors or directors. That isn't even beginning to mention people maybe who happen to be related to those who have since passed away, but were either famous or infamous back in the day. I can't even imagine the process of maybe
That must suck.
several generations being related to, and I know this is a wild example, but Adolf Hitler. Like maybe there is a correlation down the grapevine, and people eventually find out about that, and then you're constantly being harassed and intimidated or confronted because you happen to be related to that. And then for me, on a philosophical level, that then trails into a bigger thing that could also correlate to something that happens here in the U.S., which a lot of people think is necessary, which is reparations. Like you happen to be a dozen generations separate from, maybe, like as a white person maybe, you happen to be kind of correlated or related for sure with someone 12 generations before who used to be a plantation owner. And then, the fact that there are people out there who would like resent you for that, even though, for example, me, I have no involvement of any of that culture, and I think it's wrong. Like, there are people out there who believe that because of my relations to those people, that in one way or the other, if they ever found out about all this information and made the plans, coordinated everything to confront me, they'd be like, you should be paying money to minorities and stuff. I'm like, dude, I'm broke. Like, what are you talking about? That, and it's been so long.
I mean, it's like I guess that's like an oversimplification of it, isn't it, really? But it's like, you have to find a way of kind of deciding on collective responsibility for stuff. And I do agree that it's really hard to draw a line between the responsibility of somebody and then their children and their children's children. That doesn't really make any sense. So I think it's a question of how you decide on collective responsibility, not like how you draw a direct line between one person and something that happened several generations ago. So I don't know. I think those two things are also deliberately confused quite a lot, because you can't really change the facts, but you can definitely make people feel things differently, depending on how you frame those facts. So saying that one generation is responsible for something doesn't automatically say that anybody related to that person is responsible, but there is a wider societal collective responsibility to work that out.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
Yeah, it's a really tricky situation. I think there's a parallel between people who are like born into royal families, for example, and you might think you've got everything in the world. Why would you must have a completely charmed life, but they didn't choose to be born into that environment, and suddenly they're like world famous, harassed everywhere they go, and they're just trying to live their life. And that must be pretty strange. It's strange to justify to yourself thinking you have everything you possibly need, but your life still is not very free. You don't really have any freedom.
Right.
And that's quite tough. Yeah, I don't know. It's a strange one. But yeah, basically what we're saying is being super famous sucks, but that's probably fine because we all play in weird fucking metal bands that no one's ever going to really care about. So it's fine. Right. Who's gonna stop me on the street? I wish that would happen. That's not going to happen.
Right. What an interesting topic then to branch off from Sleep Token. That was an interesting one. But those are the more important conversations I always love to have with people, because I take pride in being very phantom transparent and open about any and all skeletons I might have in my closet, because the thing is, as long as you speak up upon those things and you are able to tell those stories and speak upon your dirt, repent in a way, even though I'm not Christian. I'm not a man of God or a man of the cloth at all, despite wearing a demon priest costume last night. Made plenty of jokes during the session. Like, I pride myself in accountability, and that's like the only thing I think I take pride in, that and how hard I work to do everything that I do. Even if it's conversations like this, well, it's still conversations that in a way time travel, because in reality,
Yeah.
modern era time zones, well, Mr. Paul here is like 8 hours ahead of me, if not like a little less, but that's about it. He's preparing to end his day with music, with Orchid Empire immediately after we do this session. So I don't know. I take pride in how hard I've worked on this show, how like the overnight sessions I've done, talking with people all around the world, attempting to conquer language barriers and stuff. And now, as of yesterday, I've kickstarted conversation with a band based out of both Canada and China, which is like, okay, cool, we're finally reaching over to China. That's going to be a thing soon. So I look forward to that. And it definitely adds to that phrase of global domination through cobweb networking. That's just how it works. So, Mr. Paul,
Yeah.
I think we should definitely continue the conversation and really just kind of get caught up on what's been going on in your life, sir.
Sure. Well, we spoke in 2023, I think, and Tempest came out on Season the Mist. That was great. We decided with this current project to just basically become fairly independent, because it's just us and James, our manager, and his label, through which we're going to release. He's basically like an extra member of our band anyway. He's been with us since the beginning, pretty much. So he's been there through every different label deal we've had. And we kind of collectively came to the decision that it would be great to just have everything in our own control. Not for negative reasons, but just because we thought that would give us the shortest possible line between what we wanted to do and just doing it. And I think we live in a time where being independent and able to do that is truly possible, and also kind of really beneficial. I think it's the quicker you can do something and the easier you can do it, the better. We're really fortunate because we do music for our whole livelihoods, and we have the studio here, which is a fairly new place since we last spoke. We've moved into a new premises, so we've got the ability to make anything we want to make, which is like a blessing and a curse, because obviously it's only on us. We're the bottleneck.
Yeah.
We've got to get it done, and we have to prioritize our own music ahead of other projects we're working on if we want to do that. So naturally, it means it takes a bit longer. But that's been a really interesting journey. We have not rushed that process, let me tell you, like from just writing early demos and riffs and ideas all the way through to now where we're kind of finishing stuff up and doing the last bits of tracking and mixing. It's been something where the only focus has been on, do we like this? Is it cool? Is it what we want to do? And nothing else, like no other kind of consideration. Even from James's point of view, he's like, take your time, get it right, let's do it. He's not trying to push. So it's really healthy because it's a very kind of open and honest creative process, which not everybody has. Sometimes you might have a very strict deadline and find yourself trying to make something in that time. And I think when you're making basically art that doesn't need to exist apart from for its own sake, you have to be really careful about why you're doing that. And if you've got any other kind of extraneous reasons for changing things or for making decisions, then you should probably kind of look at that. And we've been really conscious of trying to reduce that. So it's been a really pure, interesting creative process. We do kind of need to get it done now.
Yeah.
So that's like the last bit. Because another way of rephrasing everything I just said is like, you're just fucking dragging your heels, man. So yeah, we're trying to get it right. But it's coming together. But yeah, it's been a whirlwind of creative stuff, but most of it focused on other projects in the kind of like pop music world, which has been fantastic. But it's not on our own projects. We've had some great tours, done some great live stuff, and we're going to do a lot more of that going forward as well. And yeah, it's a weird one because you're talking about quite a long period of time, and in a way it feels very recent in another way, it's a hell of a lot of months and years. So it's been a varied kind of amount of stuff. From my own personal point of view, I've really enjoyed the very, very collaborative process that we've always loved, but has been especially on this album, where it's literally like from the ground up, every single idea is the three of us collaborating on that idea. From like the initial ideas to all the way through to like lyrics and programming and production and recording, everything's very, very collaborative, which I think is super interesting. I don't know how much that's the case, and I know it's the case of some bands, but I think in a lot of cases there might be one or two people in a band who really drive everything forwards. It's one of the benefits of being a three-piece, to be fair, is that it's a small unit, so it's just the three of us working on stuff all the time. Yeah, that's been really good, and has meant that the album is one of the more creative ones that we've done, I think. The concept, by the way, is folklore, so we're talking about mythology, whereas the previous record was like historical kind of fiction. This is just mythology, legend, anything from thousands of years ago to like recently, which has been really interesting. I don't know if you're like a buff on any of that stuff, but it's really fun.
Oh yeah, no. When it comes to religion and therefore mythology kind of being a correlating topic, as most religion is just glorified mythology. It is mythology with a fan club, and a big fan club that just happened to exist in certain regions around the world, and therefore Christianity, monotheism, Western monotheism, through the Anglo-Saxons and the Crusades, everything that has occurred since then, it's just a glorified Jesus fan club. Like that's one way you could put it. So then when you are almost exclusively diving into mythology, no matter the pantheon, there's still a lot to toy around with. And I've always appreciated the phrase as it is returned to me here and there throughout the years, that even in mythology and fiction, more often than not, there is fact. There is reality.
Yeah.
There is something real in there, and not just because.
Well, there's human condition as
Exactly.
well. There's not. It's not just fact, but I've believed for a long time that even if you're speaking completely stream of consciousness, for example, if you were just talking what you think is gibberish, you're just literally stringing random words together, you're still showing something about yourself and the way you see the world and your own personality in that way. So I think it's whether you have a focused concept or not, you are revealing something about sort of your own view on the world and therefore the human condition. And myth is a brilliant melting pot of those ideas, because they often exist without really like an obvious starting point or an obvious kind of defined version of that myth. So you end up with a kind of like Chinese whispers version of it, and that's really interesting in its own way. But yeah, you're right. Any time there's mythology, there is some truth.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's what my favorite thing is about religion. Unfortunately, some people extend that into a more occultic, just like, this is the truth. This is the truth and there's nothing else. And therefore you have acolytes and you have zealots that can potentially endanger people around them. But then once you start moving yourself away from the more occultic practices, I think, or people who are in that way, they are just like focused, they are almost obsessed, and in their heart they feel that this is the truth, there's nothing else, and if you don't follow this, you're a fool, or something like that. People can be pretty harsh with religion. And I've noticed in sessions since we filmed ours back in 2023, I didn't even realize how much dominion Western monotheism, Christianity, Catholicism had on the entire world. I interviewed bands from Norway and found out that there's little to no people that are active practitioners of Ossature anymore. Like at some point, not too long ago, maybe a couple centuries ago now, 3 centuries ago, let's go ahead and put it that way, people from the Anglo-Saxon churches and establishments, they went into Norway, they went into the Philippines, they went into Spain, and basically everybody around the world right now seems to follow one God and one God alone. And like I said, it's through those people that are like, this is the truth and there's no other truth. And if you have another truth, there will be problems. And that's just recorded history. People did some pretty heinous things in the name of certain religions, or out of ignorance. So then thinking upon that.
Yeah, I think it depends on your kind of viewpoint on it. But I think where I see the church, so any church, like any kind of center for that, is just as a curator of transcendent experience. So you go there so that you don't think about anything else for an hour and a half or whatever it is. And in that way, it's no different from loads of other things that we do all the time. Music is that for me as well. And I don't think that should be discouraged. I think that's like a positive thing that a lot of people can get. Obviously, it's also a system of control, and has been for like most of human evolution. I think the sort of the downside can outweigh the upside sometimes for people, but there's belief and there's faith and there's trying to work out what the hell you're doing in the universe, and everybody has that question. And then there's like, fundamentalism and the kind of belief that your version of it is the right one and everyone else is wrong. And I think my philosophy is I kind of assume that I must not know what the hell I'm doing and that everybody else must know what they're doing. And therefore, I'm always open to being changed and interested by ideas. And if you have that viewpoint, but then you're also quite logical and quite rational about how you take on information, then you can't really ever be sort of terrified of anything.
Right.
If you have the idea that you are certain in your principles, you are 100% locked in that the way you have decided things are, the way you've been told things are, maybe you never made that decision. If you have absolute certainty in that, which cannot be questioned, it's too fragile to be questioned, then you're going to end up in a situation where you hate other people quite often, and that's not useful.
No.
For me personally, I don't see the use in that. I think it's really complicated because it's such a simple individual thing that's gone back to, like, monkeys looking up at the sky and wondering what the hell's going on, to now. But it's been weaponized and formalized, I should say, and constitutionalized into something that has no flexibility, except in expressing itself.
Yes.
Because it can be infinitely flexible when it comes to justifying itself. And that creates all sorts of problems. And it's, more importantly, it's used by lots of people who don't actually believe it.
Yeah.
If they're really honest, as a way of controlling other people, and that's sad.
Yeah.
But hey, I mean, we've never tried a utopia where every single person is completely enlightened. That might not work.
Yeah, unfortunately not. And the only reason, the context truly of a statement like that is just, I think, it at least here in the U.S., in my opinion, it roots back to the MK Ultra experiments and Operation Paperclip, where we had these very, very boundless, philosophically boundless doctors from deep within the secret operations of Nazi Germany. We had them return to the United States to begin experimentations in medicine and agricultural industry alike. And this does correlate and root with the mythology conversation we're having, because there have been plenty of programs on the History Channel or other places elsewhere where there is a theory that connects that of centaurs, minotaurs, krakens, griffins, and all that, and it correlates it with that of our 21st century toying with genetic engineering and genetically modified organisms. I think that in and of itself, and the way that they've been experimenting with certain foods, produce and stuff, making it to where there are pesticides that are just potent enough to where they wipe out the the insects that would previously hunt after them, and it completely wipes them out. So therefore, then over time and throughout the 21st century, we've had agriculture, produce, food that we're consuming that does have pesticides in it, but they claim they want to claim that in process, that's the sacrifice that we make if we want more food and if we want to be able to nourish ourselves more. And there's a little bit of deception in that. But ultimately, back in the day, there were stories of giant 8-foot things that had the upper body of a human, the head of a bull, and then the hooves of a bull. And it would just charge at you. And Spartans, Greek soldiers and stuff would have to fight back against it. There was Medusa, who in and of itself, that's a very, very sad story when you really dig into it. But then, she had the ability to turn people to stone with just her eyes. It's like, what's the truth behind that? So,
well, that's the interesting thing about the metaphor of this mythology, right? That's what we're exploring. So, Labyrinth is about the Minotaur story, and the Minotaur story is not just there's a monster and they would like feed people to the monster in the labyrinth. It was like the monster existed because the mother of the monster was handed out a punishment by the gods, and the punishment was the birth of this hideous creature. It's like, it's so personal and it's so deep. It's not like a generic thing. It's a really like, this is what happens if you displease the gods. And same with the Medusa story, where it's actually I don't know if we've used Medusa in a song. We should probably do that. But well, I don't think we can have more than one Greek myth though. But the story of that, if you think about it, is about profound loneliness, because she can't form attachment to anybody, because anybody that looks at her gets turned to stone. It's like, it's such a brilliant metaphor for like someone who's depressingly lonely and hideously lonely. It's like, it's such a amazing parable.
Oh yeah. And not only that, but like only learning in recent years that then, not to be too morbid, but she was a victim and she was cursed with what she has. It tells you how philosophical people were back in the day, even if they did speak through metaphors and stuff. And now in this modern day, it's like, well, not only was the imagery through metaphor, and it's like, well, if you ran into a woman with a head of snakes and she turned you to stone, wouldn't you avoid her too? Maybe people that are victimized on that level, they aren't, maybe that's one of the messages of the story, is that they are not capable of being loved. And that is then through the interpretation of Hera, the queen of the Greek gods, and her jealousy, her envy of this person. But at the same time, according to Hellenic mythology, Zeus was he kind of slept around a lot. And therefore, his wife got jealous, and then she cursed this other woman to never be able to have a connection with anyone ever again. I'm like, that's some pretty petty freaking...
The ancient Greeks, man. The ancient Greek gods were like not good people.
No, they really weren't.
Well, they were gods. They didn't have to be good people.
Exactly.
So, but isn't it interesting that that's the main takeaway from all of that mythology? And it isn't really an organized religion in the same way that we know of modern organized religion, which is much more recent.
Right.
But the takeaway from all that mythology was that you better be careful or you might piss off an overlord. And like, it wasn't about worshipping them because they were great. It was about worshipping them through the fear of retribution.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting. There's loads of other mythology that isn't, that ancient, which kind of follows suit. But it's interesting how the main takeaway for a lot of modern religions, or say modern, but a lot of, mono-religions, as you're talking about, is the ubiquitous goodness of God, the brilliance of God, the God who only wants the best for you. And actually, it's almost like prior to that, it was more of a story of a God who was like vain and capricious and avaricious and like hated their sort of worthless subjects. But yeah, it changed. It's really interesting. So that's why we're exploring those things, because they breathe life into modern questions as well as being really interesting in their own right. But we're not just sticking in the past. We have like more modern stuff, like with the Bermuda Triangle. It's like a brilliant myth that we're investigating in one song, and that's really cool because all these things are unknowable, right? But just the idea. So the idea that we've got on one song is from the point of view of somebody who wants to disappear and wants to see what it's like to evaporate into nothing, and maybe what's waiting on the other side is better than this, you know. And like in Angel Fire, there's about UFOs and alien abduction, but from the point of view of someone who's obsessed by that being like a positive thing, like they want to be transcended, which I guess is a sort of a semi-religious thing in its own right. And it's interesting from doing this, we've researched all these different subjects, and they all have a lot of correlation, a lot of things that kind of cross over. And it's usually about the transcendence from normality to extraordinariness. And that's what's interesting, whether that's through like some horrible, monster, or it's from being taken away to another place, like a different place. It's like there's a lot of very common themes. Maybe that's just what makes mythology exciting to humans in general.
Yeah, and honestly too, for me, mythology, whether Greek, Norse, or even mythologies that many of us do not recognize today that correlated with societies like Atlantis or Babylon or the Mesopotamian gods, which then all tie together, and there are theories through the same mediums and platforms that all of those gods were aliens of the same species, and then I kind of continued upon that religiously. Not even really religiously, but I have a theory that all of them were depicted as kind of like Greek gods and Viking gods to conceal their true identity, in which in reality they were all one species that then the Christians regard as Nephilim, and eventually people amongst humanity. They were qualified, they were capable of wielding the weapons and tools of these gods, killed some of those gods, and then in bulk, this collective species, this collective society of greater beings that were just technologically more
That's really interesting
at the time. Like the moment that, for example, and this is always the little point that I put in there, the moment that one of us could wield Mjolnir, the hammer of Thor, and like basically smash his skull in, the other gods were like, oh fuck, they've learned. These parasites have learned, and then they dipped, they left, and therefore that's
amazing.
That's one of the narrative premises of a story that I'm softly reincarnating from a 3-book novel that I did back in elementary school, mind you, and
nice.
I only disregarded it because despite my lack of experience, it devolved into an erotica, and I still remember the day that I still remember the day that I was looking at that final book, and I'm like, you know what? I'll come back to this one day, but this is fucking trash, and I just threw away all 3 of these notebooks because I'm like,
it really got away from you.
It really got away from me, yeah, because I was a little innocent Christian boy at the time, but I was hearing about lots of stuff, and I'm like, you know what, Transformers, that first film, Megan Fox was pretty attractive. So I kid you not, I quoted basically how the end of that movie went with her and Shia LaBeouf on the hood of that Camaro. I detailed like her whole outfit and shit, and that was the end of the 3rd book. And I'm like, this, not only is this a ripoff of the first Transformers film, but like this is ridiculous. This got away from the main narrative so much.
You had noble intentions, but your adolescence got the better of you.
Exactly. And more
yeah,
importantly,
I feel that.
It's the lack of experience also had me kind of embarrassed. I'm like, I haven't even done any of this stuff yet. I haven't even had this profound connection with the woman yet. What am I writing? I don't know about this shit. I'm inexperienced.
That is amazing.
Just threw away the book. I threw away that 3-book novel. But the thing is, now the intention, after being inspired by bands like Distant, being inspired by individuals like Marty Leith of Dragon Corpse, who assembled the entire discography so far of Dragon Corpse through a solo D&D campaign that he did. Now I'm like, okay, so I want to definitely do a narrative that's a little bit more matured. I happened upon locating setting to the same place where the Goonies takes place, which is Astoria, Oregon. I just happened upon that. I'm like, I want a creepy, gloomy fishing city somewhere here in the United States. First thing that popped up was Astoria, Oregon. I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool. And then maybe a month later,
That's funny.
I realize that this is also where the Goonies takes place. I'm like, this is perfect. This is like
There you go.
pop culture correlation and everything. But then
That's amazing.
I've seen bits and pieces of shows like Riverdale over time, or My Chilling Adventures with Sabrina, and I'm like, okay, so what would be really funny and fascinating is if the first book of lore is essentially a Riverdale parody, where this random kid who was raised by a next door dimension Reaper-esque figure, who is his father pokes into the first dimension, meets his mom, who used to be like really, really perverse. She used to be in poverty, right? They get together, they have a really good relationship, but eventually he has to go back because he's not really allowed to be in that second dimension. But after he leaves, and after him telling the mother about everything he does, she then introduces her son to a variety of psychedelic substances, because that's the closest thing that she can get to seeing creatures in the second dimension. He grows up with that, takes that experience of psychedelic exposure to this gloomy kind of, almost like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, that first movie. It's like, this is a town of sardines. He takes that psychedelic experience with him, takes that to Astoria, Oregon, to this high school, and in little, like maybe half a year, because of his experience and these people's lack of exposure to substances, he briefly becomes the king of the school and even has the police officers in the town under his finger. And I'm like, okay, this is like a really edgy, like teenage king narrative. But then there's a curveball, because this random student, kind of into the Spider-Verse style, she randomly shows up at his school looking for him. She's not technically from the second dimension, but she is, and she ends up getting introduced to him, starts stalking him. He notices. There's going to be a whole bunch of stuff with it, but really it goes from a Riverdale teenage king narrative, and then there's a 180 turn, because they have to go into a second dimension, relearn physics, and jump into the society where, you know, the joke will be that it's a furry dimension or whatever, because you got anthropomorphic evolved people. There's more context to it. But he then goes into a world where the food chain is law, and at a certain point, once you get old enough, you kind of have to surrender your rights and surrender your life to these predator species and stuff. But then it goes even higher, because similar to narratives like Treasure Planet or even John Carter, the whole solar system is actually interconnected, and each of the planets have like a dormant spirit that eventually would come together and realize that if they're going to survive on the infinite cosmic scale, they need to work together. They need to be more interconnected. So that would be really fun to toy with, is just basically dormant spirits of every planet we know right now. They have like a solar council of sorts, but the greater enemy is actually the older twin brothers of main character's father, and eventually they have to take the advanced technology of solar sailing ships. That's why the Treasure Planet is mentioned, and they have to go far into the closest galactic or cosmic ocean to fight these elder twins, who then also, with the flick of their finger, the swish of their finger, they transport them into pocket dimensions, and they have to adjust to the physics of those dimensions. Visually, though, it'll be like black and white, and you see like inverted and dark matter spaces and shit, and the power is going to be called friction. But, you know, there's a whole bunch of stuff. It's definitely more evolved than the first 3-book novel that then devolved.
You got it all worked. I mean, that's a detailed elevator pitch. You might want to put like a single paragraph version of that down.
Yes, right.
Somehow. But I don't envy the process of trying to whittle that down. And this is the point, isn't it? We basically just all sit around dreaming up crazy fucking shit and then put it into practice. And in our case, it's in the music.
Right.
Which
and that's
is amazing.
That's a beautiful thing too, is that since like kickstarting this new evolved narrative, I'm like, okay, so of course potentially live streaming a D&D campaign with multiple musicians I've networked with through the Anatomy Crosscast over these last 4 years, who might happen to be involved, and that would get them into voice acting if they wanted to participate via live stream. The idea is to improvise through D&D campaign 6 intermediate level reading novels worth of lore, not including separate conflicts that just aren't mentioned in those main 6 books, But then on top of that, it's like, I want to then turn all of the lore of this into a technical slamming or tech slam band called Anomalous Demonstration of Misanthropy. And that's more or less the bigger point that you were mentioning before, is that, or what I was trying to get to before, is that a lot of mythology, it speaks in metaphors, it speaks in riddles. Now we have science that kind of backs what they were talking about at the time. But not only that, it is all truly an anomalous demonstration of misanthropy, because you have a lot of people today that don't like being human, don't like being associated with the history of the current iteration of humanity or Homo sapiens. Wouldn't be surprised if there were several versions of it beforehand. That's where Atlantis fell. That's where Mesopotamia collapsed. There are possibly societies predating that, but we'll never know, because a certain library in Greece got burned to the ground hundreds of years ago now, deleting so many societies, possibly worth of just lore and writing. And therefore, that also, in my opinion, correlates it with fictional narratives like One Piece, where there was an entire century of lost history that was just wiped from the map. But ultimately, a lot of us are misanthropists, especially when we start diving into mythology and accepting it with open arms. You realize how much more of a misanthropist that you become over time because of your resentment of the reality of humans, and then you look to get into fictional narratives and stuff. I think that's one of the main points.
There's your thesis. There's your thesis. Is death metal trying to explain humanity or just rejecting it? And there you go. That's the question. But yeah,
definitely a good question.
I've got to crack on because I've got to go to rehearse right now with my boys who are about to arrive.
Fair enough.
I'm going to run out of time.
Okay. Alrighty. So in that case, after a pretty solid 50, almost an hour conversation, then, as per, Paul's other things that he has to do today, that will be the end of this return Anatomy Crosscast session. Hopefully, in the near future, we can get other members of Black Orchid Empire involved as well, as we get closer to their upcoming album release, and, as they continue the road mapping for that and get more and more singles out. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, and everything possibly in between, this has been the Anatomy Crosscast. I've been your host, Sean Cross, and we'll see you later.
Cheers, man.